There comes a moment in every person's life when they quietly realize something about themselves, something they've avoided confronting for years. It is not dramatic, it is not loud, it is not a cinematic breakdown where everything suddenly collapses. It is far more subtle, almost private. A gentle recognition that a specific weakness, a personal flaw, a hidden pattern, has been shaping their decisions more than they would like to admit. Machiavelli understood this moment with unsettling clarity. In The Prince, he wrote not only about power in political realms, but also about power within the self. To him, strength was never simply the ability to dominate others. True power began with a mastery of one's own impulses, those quiet internal forces that are invisible to everyone except you. He believed a person is destroyed not by their enemies, but by what they refuse to confront inside themselves. A ruler loses control long before the kingdom collapses. A person loses direction long before life becomes chaotic. Weakness does not appear suddenly. It grows in silence, fed by avoidance, insecurity, and emotional habits that feel comfortable in the moment, but destructive in the long run. When Machiavelli spoke about crushing weakness, he did not mean cruelty or violence. He meant clarity. He meant the willingness to observe yourself the way a strategist observes a battlefield, without emotional distortion, without excuses, and without flattery. To calmly see your limitations before they gain enough strength to define your life. In many ways, this is one of the most compassionate acts you can perform for yourself. Because the weaknesses you do not confront early will eventually confront you later, at a time when the cost is far higher. A small insecurity becomes a lifelong pattern. A single unaddressed fear becomes an internal cage. A tendency to delay becomes years of stuckness. And a habit of pleasing others becomes a quiet erosion of self-respect. This video is not about becoming harsh or rigid. It is about becoming honest. It is about returning to the simple, steady truth that your life changes the moment you stop negotiating with your weaknesses. Today we will explore 6 calm, reflective, Machiavellian insights to help you understand, manage, and ultimately disarm the weaknesses that quietly shape your life. Let's begin. Number 1, identify the weakness that repeats. Machiavelli believed patterns reveal truth, and this idea remains one of the most practical psychological insights you can apply to your life today. A single mistake means nothing. All humans slip, stumble, and misjudge. But a recurring mistake means everything because repetition exposes structure. Weakness is rarely chaotic, it is predictable. Modern behavioral psychology confirms this. The human brain forms habits through repeated neural pathways, making certain responses automatic unless consciously interrupted. So when you notice the same type of conflict showing up in your relationships, or when a specific emotional trigger pulls you into the same reaction every time, what you are witnessing is not random misfortune, but a behavioral loop. The same frustration, the same argument, the same regret afterward. These are not coincidences, they are signals. Machiavelli advised rulers to study their adversaries through patterns, but his wisdom applies inward as well. Your repeated reactions are like footprints left by an unseen part of your character, revealing where you still lack control. And once you see the pattern clearly, you lose the ability to lie to yourself about it. A predictable weakness is no longer a mystery. It becomes a mirror. In cognitive science, this is called metacognition. stepping outside yourself long enough to observe what your mind is doing without being swept away by it. This shift from participation to observation is what allows growth to begin. What feels like failure is actually data. Every repeated mistake charts the outline of a deeper issue. Maybe you avoid confrontation until resentment builds. Maybe you chase validation when you feel insecure. Or maybe you sabotage opportunities because you fear responsibility. These patterns are rarely visible in the moment, but time reveals them with ruthless consistency. And yet, this is exactly why they can be defeated. A weakness you can predict is a weakness you can disarm. When you know what triggers you, you can prepare for it. When you know how you typically respond, you can interrupt the sequence. When you know the story your behavior keeps repeating, you can rewrite it. Machiavelli argued that power belongs to those who understand cause and effect more clearly than the people around them. In your own life, that means becoming a strategist of your internal world, tracking themes, noticing cycles, and refusing to label recurring pain as coincidence. The moment you acknowledge the pattern is the moment you become capable of changing it. This is the beginning of strength, not perfection, but awareness sharpened into discipline. Number 2, treat weakness as a competitor, not an enemy. Machiavelli recommended viewing inner flaws the same way a strategist studies a rival, calmly, objectively, and without emotional frenzy. And this perspective is far more psychologically accurate than many modern self-help slogans. In human behavior research, weaknesses often show up as patterns rooted in cognitive biases, habits of avoidance, or the brain's natural inclination toward conserving energy. Neuroscience confirms that your mind prefers comfort because comfort requires fewer metabolic resources. Growth, however, demands discomfort, uncertainty, and the rewiring of neural pathways through repetition. Machiavelli understood this long before brain scans existed. He recognized that people sabotage themselves not out of malice, but out of a subtle loyalty to the familiar. That is why he taught that weakness is not evil. It is simply the part of you that wants safety more than transformation. When you begin to treat your weaknesses the way a strategist observes a potential adversary, something remarkable happens. You stop taking them personally. Instead of seeing procrastination, fear, or self-doubt as proof of inadequacy, you start seeing them as predictable patterns with specific triggers, tendencies, and motives. This shift mirrors modern cognitive behavioral therapy, which emphasizes detachment, analysis, and awareness rather than shame. By stepping back and watching your impulses as if they belong to someone else, you reduce their emotional authority. Studies on mindfulness show that this detached awareness activates the brain's prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for rational decision-making and long-term planning, while quieting the amygdala, the center of fear and impulsive reactions. Machiavelli's strategic lens creates the same neurological advantage: distance. And distance gives you power. When you stop wrestling with your weakness and start studying it, you can predict its moves. You begin to notice when it shows up, what situations trigger it, and which emotional states make it stronger. Every strategist knows that the enemy you understand becomes the enemy you can manage. In practical terms, this means mapping out your patterns. If your weakness is avoidance, observe the first moment the urge appears. If it is self-doubt, study the situations in which your confidence collapses. If it is a distraction, notice the exact cues that pull you away. Over time, this self-observation builds what psychologists call metacognitive awareness, the ability to step outside yourself and see your internal world with clarity. With this awareness, you stop being reactive and start becoming intentional. Machiavelli's wisdom, therefore, is not harsh. It is liberating. He teaches that power does not begin with aggression, ambition, or dominance. It begins with understanding yourself so thoroughly that your weaknesses can no longer ambush you. Number 3, strengthen the opposite virtue. Every weakness has an equal and opposite antidote, and this idea has been echoed through centuries of philosophy, psychology, and even behavioral science. In practical terms, fear weakens when courage is trained in small, intentional doses, a principle supported by exposure therapy in modern psychology, where gradual contact with discomfort reduces its power. Impulsiveness weakens when discipline is practiced daily, aligning perfectly with what behavioral economists describe as micro-habits, tiny repeated actions that compound into long-term self-mastery. Machiavelli understood this relationship well. In his writings, he never suggested that a person should attempt to completely erase their flaws. Instead, he believed in a form of internal balancing. You do not eliminate weakness. You overpower it by strengthening the virtue that neutralizes it. This becomes a slow, steady form of psychological engineering, where each decision, each disciplined act, and each moment of self-awareness shapes you more than any grand declaration ever could. The process is not dramatic. It is quiet, intentional, and rooted in the reality that human beings are not fixed creatures. We are malleable, capable of restructuring our tendencies with consistent effort. In modern neuroscience, this concept aligns with neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself through repeated behavior. When you practice courage, even in tiny moments such as speaking up once in a meeting or facing a task you usually avoid, the neural pathways associated with fear begin to weaken, while those associated with bravery strengthen. The same applies to impulsiveness. When you choose to delay gratification just once, even for a minute, you create a psychological foothold. Over time, this grows into a stable, internal architecture of restraint. Machiavelli's lens adds a pragmatic, almost strategic dimension to this transformation. He saw the individual as a system of forces, impulses, instincts, habits, and emotions, all competing for dominance. Power, in this view, is not dominance over others, but mastery over the internal forces that historically dictated your choices. By identifying the counter-virtue to each weakness, you engage in a form of self-governance that strengthens character without denying the natural tensions within you. This process of strengthening the antidote is also deeply efficient. Instead of wasting energy trying to repress fear or shame yourself for lack of discipline, you invest that energy into building something stronger, something that naturally crowds out the weakness. Over weeks and months, the balance shifts. The weakness does not disappear, but it loses influence, becoming a quiet background hum instead of the loud voice it once was. This is the long game of psychological sovereignty, slow, deliberate refinement that turns the mind into an ally rather than an adversary. Number 4, remove environments that feed the weakness. Machiavelli believed that human behavior is never fixed. It is shaped, stretched, and sometimes distorted by the environment that surrounds it. In his view, even a strong, disciplined person can find their resolve weakening if placed in the wrong context. Modern psychology echoes this idea through studies on environmental triggers, decision fatigue, and behavioral conditioning. revealing that people often overestimate willpower and underestimate the power of surroundings. A person trying to cultivate discipline will struggle in a space filled with temptations, just as someone seeking clarity will falter in a chaotic environment. Weakness does not always originate from internal flaws. More often, it is fed by repeated exposure to the same people, routines, and settings that reinforce unproductive patterns. Machiavelli understood that if you want to change your life, you cannot rely on sheer force of character alone. You must engineer the conditions that support the person you want to become. In behavioral science, this is known as choice architecture, structuring your environment so that the right decisions become easier and the wrong ones become inconvenient. The brain is deeply responsive to cues, and those cues often operate subconsciously. For example, research shows that merely seeing a phone can reduce cognitive performance, suggesting that distraction is not a matter of weakness, but of proximity. Likewise, studies on habit formation show that new behaviors thrive when paired with new environments, because the mind is no longer anchored to old associations. This is why gyms feel more motivating than living rooms, why libraries quiet the mind, and why solitude often brings clarity. Machiavelli's principle is both simple and powerful. If your weakness consistently appears in certain contexts, then transform or leave those contexts. A toxic social circle will drain the most resilient person. A routine built around avoidance or comfort will sabotage growth. A workspace overflowing with noise will kill focus, no matter how determined you are. Changing scenery is not an escape. It is a strategic repositioning, a deliberate shift in the battlefield of the mind. In The Prince, Machiavelli emphasized adaptability, moving, adjusting, and redesigning one's surroundings to regain control. Today, psychologists call this situational strength, the idea that environments can either support self-mastery or undermine it. Sometimes, the most powerful act of self-control is not gritting your teeth or pushing harder, but stepping back, observing the patterns, and altering the conditions that feed your weakness. When you change where you stand, you change what stands against you. Number 5, master the art of delayed response. Impulsive reactions destroy more lives, relationships, and opportunities than most people realize. And modern psychology supports this with striking clarity. Neuroscientists have found that emotional triggers activate the amygdala in less than a second, pushing the mind toward fast, defensive, and often irrational responses. This is why people later say, "I don't know what came over me." Machiavelli understood this danger centuries before brain scans existed. In The Prince, he warned leaders that when emotions rise, especially anger or fear, they should deliberately slow their pace, because the first reaction is almost always the least strategic one. Interestingly, research from behavioral psychology shows that pausing for just 5 to 10 seconds lowers physiological arousal, giving the prefrontal cortex time to regain control. This is the part of the brain responsible for logic, planning, and long-term thinking. That brief silence becomes a shield, reducing the mental static created by stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Machiavelli's counsel, when viewed through today's science, was remarkably accurate. A delayed reaction literally increases accuracy. Even military training programs teach soldiers and negotiators a similar principle: slow down under pressure to prevent emotional hijacking. What makes this habit so powerful is that it quietly neutralizes weaknesses that often sabotage people: impatience, anger, anxiety, and the need to defend oneself too quickly. Modern cognitive behavioral therapy calls this a response delay technique, and it has been proven to reduce impulsive mistakes in both high-stress and everyday environments. Instead of reacting immediately when provoked, misunderstood, or pressured, a person who pauses, even briefly, creates psychological distance from the trigger. That small distance transforms confusion into clarity and protects self-respect without escalating conflict. In professional settings, this pause can prevent career-damaging decisions. In relationships, it avoids unnecessary arguments. In personal growth, it becomes evidence of maturity, replacing emotional reactivity. Machiavelli wasn't promoting coldness. He was teaching emotional sovereignty, the ability to remain the master of one's own inner state. And the paradox is fascinating. The slower the reaction, the stronger the control appears. People who maintain composure under pressure are often perceived as wiser, more stable, and more powerful. Emotional patience becomes a silent form of dominance. So when the heat rises, when the moment feels urgent, when your instincts scream to respond now, remember this. A few seconds of deliberate silence can protect your future, your relationships, and your reputation. The pause is not weakness. It is strategy. It is the invisible line between self-ruin and self-mastery. Number 6, build self-respect through small, consistent wins. The most Machiavellian form of strength is not loud, dramatic, or forceful. It is quiet self-respect. This kind of strength grows in the background of your life, not in grand gestures, but in the small, consistent actions you repeat when no one is watching by. Machiavelli understood that power begins within, long before it is expressed outwardly. When you wake up on time, complete a task you promised yourself you would finish, or set a boundary even when it feels uncomfortable, you are doing more than checking off a responsibility. You are building a psychological archive of proof that you can trust yourself. Modern psychology supports this. Micro-actions repeated daily create what behavioral scientists call identity evidence. Each successful act becomes a data point in your mind, reinforcing the belief that you are disciplined, capable, and reliable. Over time, this strengthens what researchers refer to as internal locus of control, the awareness that you influence the direction of your own life. Machiavelli would argue that such internal control is the foundation of all external influence. Weakness begins to lose its grip the moment you stop negotiating with your excuses and start honoring your commitments. Instead of battling weakness directly, you slowly starve it by feeding your self-respect through consistency. Neuroscience also shows that repeated follow-through reshapes neural pathways, making disciplined behavior easier and more automatic. In other words, every small act of integrity changes the brain's default settings. This is why quiet self-respect becomes its own form of power. It makes you internally sovereign. You're no longer pushed around by impulses, moods, or external pressure. Your strength becomes self-generated. And eventually, this internal currency of self-respect grows so steadily and silently that weakness has nowhere left to exist.